Oh, Fallout 76, you had so much potential. A cooperative, post-apocalyptic, sprawling open world with Fallout's fantastic narrative sewn in, alongside a dash of survival elements and some tense PvP encounters for good measure. Alas, Fallout 76 is something else. Something that just feels a little lost. '76 is a prequel to the previous Fallout titles, taking place 25 years after the nuclear war that devastated the Earth. You play a dweller from Vault 76, one of the first vaults to open up after the bombs have dropped. It's Reclamation Day and you're tasked with recolonising the Appalachia wasteland. Fallout 76 feels just like Fallout 4 from a mechanical perspective. The gunplay, movement, menu systems and visuals all feel incredibly familiar, for better or worse. The difference here is that 23 other players fill the world alongside you. Players can go at it alone or team up with up to 3 others to take on dangerous wastelands. Where the game makes its most egregious error, however, is in that story. Something which the series is well regarded for generally. Fallout 3, New Vegas and 4 have some brilliant story beats, side quests, decision making, unexpected world events and great characters. 76 however does away with all of that mould almost entirely. There are no proper NPCs here, no real decisions to make and no interesting characters. As a player, knowing you'll never encounter an actual living NPC causes a huge glaring issue from a story angle. When you're reading those terminals and listening to the holotapes and following quest chains, you just know that in the back of your mind that person that you're following is guaranteed to end up being a corpse at best. It's anticlimactic on so many occasions. There's just no memorable witty characters, there's no real standout story beats here. The best parts of Fallout are gone in 76. Instead, in its place is multiplayer. What makes the whole package all that more disappointing is that the multiplayer side of Fallout 76 doesn't even feel as well explored as it potentially should. It's almost as if just getting the game's aging technology working with 24 players simultaneously was the team's real challenge here. Yes, you can cooperate on missions and explore the world together, but whilst quest objectives themselves can be seen by others and 76's progression based perk cards can be shared with others, completing a quest objective itself has to be done by every single player individually. The PvP also seems riddled with some baffling decisions too. It feels like the team at Bethesda were far too concerned about griefing and the other nasty aspects of PvP that they went in the complete opposite direction. Once you hit level 5 you can attack other players, doing so will damage them but only by a tiny amount. The other player has to attack back to initiate full PvP damage. And with the limited ammo and survival aspects of the game, all this means is that nobody really bothers with PvP. Sure, it is possible to grief someone if you're dedicated enough, but you'll run through so much ammo and resources in doing so. After the first few days of launch, players quickly seem to realise that the PvP side of things is just more hassle than it's worth. Shortly after the game released, we were being blasted by another player, pummeling a ton of ammo into us, whilst we just stood there emoting at him. It is pointless. This side of Fallout 76 could be so freaking good as well with simple tweaks. Imagine roaming the wastelands with that added tension that a band of enemies could appear at any moment. It'd give the world an entirely different vibe. Why Bethesda can't simply ask players whether they want full PvP or normal modes when they start the game is just beyond me. That would solve so many problems. Playing with others does make the experience more enjoyable though, there is no denying that. Despite the issues above, I've actually had some great moments playing the game with friends. It is still super fun to explore this post-apocalyptic open world, especially with others. The world of Appalachia that the team have created here might be one of the better environments we've seen so far in a Fallout game. The map itself is massive with various biomes and different environments full of areas to stumble upon and explore. Sure, the lack of NPCs does also impact the joy of exploring somewhat, but the world itself is still intriguing enough to remain interesting. I spent hours just wandering the wastelands alone and with others. It's one of the game's major strengths. I also actually really like the card-based progression system in the game too. Each time you level up, you're tasked with selecting a stat to improve from the usual special list. That's strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility and luck. Depending on which you pick, there's also a range of cards to select from, each providing different bonuses such as the ability to target limbs with VATs, or pick locks, or hack computers, improvements to weapon damage and a whole lot more. Every so often from leveling up, you'll also receive a card pack which contains various cards to pop into these special slots. Each card has a rank value assigned to it, starting at 1. So 1 point in strength equals space for a rank 1 card. If you've got 2 of the same cards, you can merge them and improve the rank and potency of them. 2 points in strength, for example, equates to 2 rank 1 cards or 1 rank 2 cards. It's a lot more simple than it seems explaining it. It's a system that works surprisingly well and adds a bit of randomness to the leveling process, which forces players to build a potentially different character to their norm. I actually ended up liking it a whole lot more than I expected. Building also makes a return from Fallout 4. If you enjoyed it there, then you're sure to enjoy it here too. Personally, I found it to be mostly pointless busy work. You can set up and move your camp anywhere, offering a free mobile fast travel point. It's fairly straightforward and intuitive to use, and in fairness it actually serves somewhat more of a point here than it did in Fallout 4. Your camp allows you to build crafting stations and resource harvesters too. It's actually pretty useful to help managing with the survival aspects of Fallout 76, such as needing to drink and eat on a regular basis. However, I found it largely ignorable outside of building a straightforward basic camp full of the essential crafting stations. There seemed to be no real benefit to spending hours and hours crafting that perfect base other than just your own personal enjoyment. Prior to launch, Bethesda released a statement telling fans to expect bugs and issues during the game's pre-launch beta phase, something that the company is pretty notorious for having plenty of in their games. 76 is no different. In fact, it might just be the worst offender of any Bethesda game to date. Arguably, Fallout 76's biggest problem is that it feels like a full-priced early access title that released far too soon. I encountered numerous bugs in my playthrough, from some more amusing ones to some that are incredibly frustrating. For example, at one point I moved the location of my camp only to find that every single one of my previously built crafting stations weren't present in the storage tab like usual. This meant that all of the stations that I'd built over the hours of playtime had just vanished into thin air. Gone. Vamoosh. To add insult to injury, the game left a single wooden platform in there though. Thanks game, real useful. Thankfully, I'm the kind of player that sets up a camp and then just dumps a bunch of stations wherever. However, if I'd actually spent hours finally crafting my base with a ton of different turrets, power stations and all the rest of it, this would have been an absolute killer of a bug, seriously. There's also plenty of quest related bugs, robots getting stuck on pathing for example, and even quests that can't be completed. Granted, one notorious quest breaking bug did get resolved via the first major update post launch. A few issues here and there are acceptable, but the severity of these issues cannot be ignored. Not forgetting those performance problems either. Fallout 76 runs pretty terribly on all 4 current gen systems, and even on a PC, with plenty of stuttering and frame rate counts often dropping into the tens when things get hectic on console. It's just not that good at all. What makes the performance problems feel even worse is that 76 doesn't really look all that good either. Even playing in 4K, Fallout 76 can often look downright ugly, particularly indoors. The game's weather effects and fairly nice lighting do help to add a welcome bit of flair to the presentation, however. There's moments when the game actually looks pretty great, but others where it just looks plain bad. It's a pretty odd mixed bag. Overall, Fallout 76 isn't a terrible game. There is still fun to be had here, especially adventuring with others, particularly if you're a fan of the series. Despite all of the issues and missed potential throughout my tens of hours with the game, I have actually mostly enjoyed my time with it, which makes placing a score on it all that more difficult. It's not entirely horrible, it's just not particularly good either. The inclusion of multiplayer is something which could be so great. Instead it feels half-baked, paired with the removal of elements which in my opinion largely define the series' high points. Combat's still meh, as it always has been in Fallout, and VATS feels like the developers just felt forced to include it rather than something that belongs here. As a package, it just feels underbaked throughout. The game feels almost like it needs another year in the oven. Bugs and issues are prevalent and mechanics feel crammed in with numerous questionable design decisions throughout. There's enough here for your money though, it's just not all that great. It is undoubtedly the worst Fallout game to date in my opinion, with unfortunately arguably some of the biggest potential. The premise of an online Fallout is still a tantalising one, the series just offers so many possibilities there. Fallout 76 however takes that opportunity and kind of destroys it, which is a damn shame. Hopefully Bethesda can build and improve upon what's here over time to create something genuinely special. It's certainly possible. There's a glimmer of something great under all this rubble. I mean, we can only hope. Be sure to like, share and subscribe for more content like this.